Yes, it is recorded now. So welcome, guys. So today we shall continue to our discussion on qualitative research. So last week we saw action research, and then we also saw case study research. So today we are going to delve into ethnography and also grounded theory. So when we have covered these two remaining research methods, then we are going to look at other intricacies involved qualitative research. We look at random um, um, questions and then other important things that we need to really understand very well, before we go into the almighty exams hall. So, kind of to recap what we did last time, um, we talked about action research when we talked about um, case study research, and we talk about different philosophical approaches. We try to define what they mean. The interpretivist research, the criticalist approach, which is mainly the interpretivist research tries to understand, people, their feelings, ideology, which believes that um, reality is all about social construction, social construction of people, what people think, or their ideas, their feelings, their emotions. So when you are doing an interpretive research, you are trying to dig deep into understanding the reality on ground and how people feel about it. So when you're doing a criticalist approach, you are mostly trying to question the status quo, using one or two social theories. You want to question some of the constraints that people are going through, because there is this belief in criticalist approach that reality is historically constructed. History plays an important role in the social reality about people, and sometimes there are societal structures, political, economical, social structures that inhibit and constrain people from doing the things they should do. So they usually advocate for equality, open democracy, questioning the status quo in order to change things. They change the social reality around people in order to give them freedom, maybe a kind of emancipation, emancipating people from what is a cake toga, or from some political constraint or social constraint that doesn't give them the freedom to act, what maybe to have that equality in the society. So that's the criticalist. We also saw the positivist, and the positivist that really believes that reality is very objective. What you see is what is there, so the things are the way you see it. We also discussed that even case study research and most of these research approaches can also take a positivist, you know um, uh, take a positivist approach. You can have a positivist case study, and when you are doing a positivist case study, what it means, like you are doing a kind of theory testing. You do a theory testing. Most times people use qualitative research when they want to develop a new theory inductively. But when you are doing like a positivist case study, which means you have a critical framework. We also emphasize the importance of theory. Just like in quantitative research, it's been said that if you don't have a theory, don't do quant. Professor Ryan will always emphasize that. That doesn't mean that in qualitative research you also do not need theory. Remember, theory is king both in qualitative and then quantitative research. But when you are doing like a grounded theory approach, you are building theory, you're based on the empirical data you are investigating. You want to build a theory that is based on the data. So the more the depth of your analysis, that is the degree of your conceptualization, the better theory you build. So at the end, you will be judged based on if you were able to come up really with a predictive or inferential statements about the reality you are studying. So doing a grounded theory could also be difficult. If you don't come up with actual inferences or hypotheses based off of the data you are studying, which means you didn't succeed in building a theory. So you know what is best for you. So you can do positivist study when you are doing case study research. You can also do interpretivist, can also be criticalist, case study research. Okay, these are like the three major philosophical approaches we saw: the interpretivist, the criticalist, then the positivist. So these are, I hope I'm not forgetting any of them, any one of them. So these are the three most important philosophical. And one thing we shall see as we progress is that these three philosophical approaches, or philosophical paradigms, decide or determines the kind of analysis you do. So there is a kind of this relationship between your approach. So your philosophical, paradigm must match the kind of analysis you want to do. For example, if you are doing an interpretivist case study or using interpretivist approach, then the best match when it comes to analysis is an analysis also that gives you that degree of freedom to really understand things, interpretively, analyze things interpretively. And that's what, like, usually, hermeneutic analysis goes well with interpretivist approach. So if you are doing like positivist, maybe documentary analysis, might be because sometimes what documents can be very objective. The way they are is what you're saying there is what the way it is, So this philosophical approach, you must be very take cognizance of that, and we shall see it as we progress. So we saw the case study research, which is the best option when you want to, maybe within 3 months, because they will say ethnography is from 6 months and above. If you want to do a case study, usually 3 months, a study that will last for like 3 months is very good. And when you are doing a case study, it's kind of a situation where everything might happen at once, where you don't have control, over what is happening. Which means a change in administration might change what you are doing in the organization. We also mentioned some important factors that needs to be considered when you are answering a qualifying exam question. You must, first of all, who remembers those 5 or 6 things that I said, whether it is being asked or it is not, you are not asked, no matter how the question comes, in as much as it is a qualitative research design in the qualifying exam, you must bring in those ideas. You must mention them, as you are constructing or answering your question. Who remembers those things that we said must be considered? Who remembers?
I don't remember, sorry.
Okay, yeah, because you were not in the
I
class.
was
Yeah.
not here.
Yes, I know.
I haven't watched the video.
Okay, so let me go straight to the answer.
Thank you.
First of all, think about, you must have a theoretical framework. You must mention your theory. You must mention the research site. Mention the research site. You must mention the research subjects. Very important. The research subjects. Then you must mention the unit of analysis. The unit of analysis. What you're analyzing in the particular organization or wherever you are doing the research. What are you interested in? Is it customer satisfaction, or some other organizational problem that you are very specific about studying? You have to mention that. you have to mention also your approach to data collection, how you are going to collect your data. Maybe mention you're going to use interview. You're going to use interview, and then you also, let's say you also triangulate the interview with also documentary analysis, like memos, magazines, units of minutes of meetings, and some other organizational publications that might give you insight into what people, do they remember when you were interviewing them. Then you also have to mention your approach to data analysis. You have to mention your approach to data analysis, and finally, maybe give a conclusion of possible outcome of the research. What could be possible outcome of such a research? Yeah, Mohammed, you have a question.
Yes, sir. And how the question look like gonna be? Like how the question is gonna be formed as?
No matter, that's what I'm saying, no matter how the question comes, once it is a qualitative research design.
Okay, got you. Like for qualitative research design. Okay,
that's the qualitative. We're talking about qualitative here, yes. No matter how the question comes, because sometimes, sometimes their question is not very explicit. It wouldn't ask you A, B, C, D, E like you are a kid. Understand? It usually comes a kind of a general question. How would you approach this? How would you design this? How would this paper become qualitative if you are to use a qualitative approach to studying what the author studied in a qualitative sense, in a quantitative, research. So like you are asked to, use a different approach in studying whatever reality that is being investigated, in a quantitative way. So once you are doing the qualitative research, you must mention these things. They expect you to state these things because they are very, very important. You cannot do justice, to your answers if you don't mention the kind of site, the kind of subject. You can mention the way you're going to collect your data. You don't need necessarily to start stating the kind of questions you are going to ask. If it were if you are doing a literature review. But I can also mention I'm going to use a semi-structured in interviews. So you can go further depending on the nature of the question to interview the people who know most in the organization.
Yeah,
so
the reason I asked.
Yeah.
The reason I asked because I'm taking now the qualitative and then course, and the thing is the first 5 exercises, like the professors give us a table and give us the articles, and they ask us to fill out these tables from gather the information from the articles and put them in the table. They did not give us a question. They just say, based on the given table, get the information from this given article, and then fill them out. That's it. So that's why came to my mind the question. But I appreciate the clarification for that. Thank you very much.
Yes, in spring 21, they were asked to prepare an algorithm for qualitative research, which I shared with you. Let me share it again with you. The algorithm almost contains every information that you need to do a qualitative research. Let me quickly, look at my files. I'm gonna close this window. We come back to it again. Okay, qualifying exams, and let me search for the particular. No, this is not the correct folder. No, this is qualifying exam papers. Let me check. Spring qualifying. Okay. And 503, okay. So they were asked an algorithm, a kind of algorithm for doing qualitative research. Like I failed to mention when I was discussing the most important factors you need to consider. I forgot to mention that the first thing should have been your research question. So keep that in mind. You have to begin by presenting your research question, or it could be modifying an earlier research, to suit a qualitative, type of research question. So we've already given examples of the differences, So quantitative might look at, factors, what factors are responsible for this. A qualitative research might ask how or why question, why does employees, dissatisfied with the current state of, or the workplace during the COVID, or maybe working from home, what's the effect of working on home on employee productivity, In that case, you are doing a kind of going an approach that is qualitative and maybe say interpretive, But in a positive study, you have hypothesis. You have a theory that is must, and then have some hypothetical information that you want to investigate. So let me share the screen now, so that you see what's here. Share screen. You can see my screen now. Okay, so 543. So this is qualitative algorithm from Tayo, So the algorithm for qualitative research: find a topic, find a site or subject, company, community, society, online location. If your site happens to be an online location, what kind of qualitative research would you be doing if your site happens to be an online location? Ethnography, exactly. So ethnography. So then the research method. I have to mention the research method you're going to use. So what is this? Case study research, ethnography, grounded theory, and choose the data collection approach, choose data analysis, narrative analysis, hermeneutics, semiotics, grounded theory, selective coding, theory for coding for theory. So choose a writing strategy, authoritative, empathic, or joint writing. Choose a communicative strategy, conference, then addendum, find funding. This is like an algorithm. For most questions, you may not need to mention writing strategy, or it might not be necessary to do communication strategy. The question might not imply that, but what is more important is finding a topic, a research site, or subjects, the research site and the subjects for the study. And then unit of analysis, all these things are very necessary, the type of research method. And remember, whenever you select a research method, you must state your reasons for making such a choice. And if you choose a data analysis, you must also state your reason for making such a choice. So all these other ones might be additional, depending on the type of question. You can also mention those things, these ones. Remember the dialogical reasoning that goes, dialogical reasoning, multiple conflicting ideas, the possibility of negative responses gathered from people, this hermeneutic cycle. So all these things, like some of the important things that it grounds qualitative research. So make sure you bring in all these things while you're answering your question. Maybe each paragraph takes care of one of these, each paragraph. And whenever you make a choice, always state the reason. Your reason or reasons why you are making such a choice. So look at the find a research topic from things you are interested in and enjoy, recommendation from professors, review of gaps, expressing research papers from similar-minded researchers meet at school, or then find a research site, a subject of the study, find a research that is a challenge due to accessibility and trust issues, through recommendation of academic advisors, through university alumni network, invitation from organizations that have problem and need solution, through personal network, circle of friends, acquaintances, So you can find, then you can determine the research method, find the topic and research site, so that you guide you towards the appropriate research method. Case study where the researcher is an external party in an observatory role to address a research question. Observatory role. Action research, where the researcher, teams up with practitioners, So between their theory in use and their espoused theory in action research. So teams up with a practitioner in a joint participation to address a research question, usually with a goal of solving an organizational problem. And so ethnography, where the research embeds sometimes surreptitiously in the research environment, adopts the culture, goes native, address the research question. Grounded theory, where the research engages with the environment with the intention to build a theory and continues to interrogate until revelatory insights is exhausted. And then choice of data collection approach. Usually data collection approach will be closely related to the research method and also the philosophical approach. However, data collection should be left to the specific needs or devices of the research. So interviews, then semi-structured. Usually we go for semi, then documents, maybe review the relevant insights, further coded, memos, bulletin, policy, then observation. Practice field work, embedded experience in a cultural, then questionnaire may be needed. So analysis to data, narrative analysis carries obviously an implied meaning that can be revealed during the techniques of narrative analysis. Maybe a story told by someone. Then hermeneutics, content of the whole, and then the different parts, semiotics, symbols are analyzed, symbolic meanings are drawn. Then grounded theory research method is very commonly used in data analysis mechanism. The Cobin and Strokes approach, as an analysis. So writing and all those things, and publishing. So there are important things that needs to be considered.
Clement, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Thank you for everything. And I was wondering if you have such a chart for quantitative research instructions as well.
Well, okay, a chart for quantitative research.
Yeah.
Oh,
something like
no.
this.
Yeah, no, I don't have any. I don't have any tabulated information, about quantitative research. I've never come across one, and I don't think I have one, unless it takes time for someone to develop such. But I think quant is a bit easier when it comes to research. It is easier than quantity, but only that you have to fight numbers and the rest. Once you have a theory and you understand your theory, you are better, you are okay with the quantitative research. It doesn't have, like, what I mean, that it doesn't have most of these intricacies when you are doing quantitative. When you are doing quantitative research and your statistical method, whether you are using ANOVA or PLSM or regression, it's very clear, straightforward what you are going to do. Yeah. But in qualitative, there are too many things, like we've seen, that needs to be considered, So because this is like a kind of real world research where you are interested in the context, and the context is noise for the positivist. So the researcher must be well equipped, well equipped. Even the process of collecting data is not easy, through interviews, you have to know what questions to ask people to gather the right type of data. But in quantitative, once you develop a very good survey question, you relax in your room, post it on wherever websites or wherever you think people can have access to the survey, and then you do your analysis, keep on collecting your data until you have a substantial sample to do your analysis. you know.
Mhm.
So
Thank you
yeah,
so much.
yeah, thank you. If I'm asked to do like a quantitative study, so the first consideration is to know whether the research is appropriate, you know, for a quantitative study, you know. So it is usually I say you do quantitative study where you know you have some degree of control. Yeah, among many other considerations, you know, before choosing a quantitative study. In quantitative study, you have some level of control in what you are doing, you know. Granted that sometimes that could be bias when you are doing doing experimental studies, you know, that could be biases, you know, maybe people didn't stay to the end, or some might have gotten a prior information about what is going on when you didn't want them to know anything, you know. Some people might have have had a knowledge or experience, you know, about what you are trying to study, which you expected them to be like neutral for you to get the real data. There could be a lot of biases that can come into an experimental survey. But usually, when you are doing quantitative research, you have some degree of control. You know, unlike in qualitative research, for instance, in a case study where things might just happen all at once, and in an ethnography, and then you have to be in the company. You know, you have to be on the research site yourself. You have to meet the people yourself. If it is an ethnography, you have to be in the field, the participants. You have to go native and all the stuff. So when you look at this and evaluate that and these two type of research approach, you will understand what I'm telling you, that qualitative research is much more complicated, and it requires greater skill, more skill, you know, than quantitative research. And then when it comes to like your data coding, you need to be good in qualitative research data analysis software. You know,
I
you have to
remember.
analyze very well. You have to do the transcription. You do the transcription of the interview you collected, and then sometimes it doesn't make sense because of the way people speak and the way you were able to record whatever you record. You know, so by the time you interview like 100 people, you must have produced more than 200 pages of data you have to deal with, you know, analyzing, and you have to make sense of your analysis. So when you look at all these things now, you can better tell yourself which one is the best approach for me, you know. And if you're not working in a company like in this country, if you're not like embedded in a research site already, it could be difficult for you to have access to an organization. You know, sometimes some organizational culture might make it difficult for you to have access, you know. So unless a company is open to research, and you are promising them that your research will not just be a waste of time, you know, that is going to contribute something, you know, to the growth of the company, to the productivity, to whatever you are researching, they might not, you know, grant you access, you know. Yeah.
Clement, what you just shared with us, the paper, is it in the shared folder?
No, it's not in the share folder, because this is one of the answers, you know, from a student, and you know, AFAF asked me not to share. AFAF asked me not to share past exam questions. You know, I can just, like the way I shared it now, I don't need to share it because people might abuse it. Understand?
Was
So I
it a
don't want them to.
question?
I don't
I
want.
think it was just an algorithm. Like,
It's an algorithm. Yes, it's an algorithm prepared as part of the of the um, of the qualitative research answer. It is a research answer. We have a similar one which we are going to share. We have a similar algorithm here, but this one is for yeah. Like my own. In the past, I used to share my answers. You know, we went through it last week, but I can't share it anymore because I've warned. You know, people will go and memorize the whole thing, thinking it is the holy grail of the answers. You know, and then they won't try to.
Jesus! But every
Yes,
question has different answers, so we cannot
every
like
question have different
use.
answers, but that's what they observe in the past that have led to the failure of many students. Yeah, in as much as they have, in as much as they have different answers, remember, it is the same type of research. You know, it is the same type of research. So there are things you can copy from others in the way they presented it. You know, it will help you to synthesize it, because the problem with this exam is, how do I synthesize information? So the tendency is when you see already made someone who passed this exam, so the tendency is like memorize one or two things from what he answers. And then a smart student can be adjust during the exam. Others will just swallow line hook and sinker, and then vomit it the same way, without any input. So
Okay, that's fine.
yeah.
But can we just share something similar to what you just shared with us? Like showed
Something
us?
something similar.
Oh, this is not similar at all. Shit.
No. You mean something similar to the algorithm?
Yeah, the thing that you were just explaining.
The algorithm I was
Like,
explaining, Okay. Yeah, but I think when you watch the Zoom section again, I think it's recorded. So I think you already have.
okay, yeah,
Yes. When you
yeah,
go back
okay.
to the record,
Yeah,
you
we'll
go back
check
to
it
the
out.
recordings. So when you go back to the recordings, you pause, and then you can have a better look at the document again because it is recorded
Yeah, don't
already.
worry about it. Yeah,
Yeah. So I didn't need to post it anyway again.
yeah.
All right.
Don't
All
worry about
right.
it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, though.
Thank you. Yeah. So ethnography. When do you think ethnography is the most appropriate research method? So who knows when, like,
Natural
you,
settings,
huh?
like natural settings, like we're inside an organization.
When you're what?
In natural settings, like within an organization.
When do you consider ethnography? You
Yeah,
already
like
have the
like
answer? Yeah.
yeah, like when you do the study like within an organization, like inside an organization, there's not
Oh,
like an action research, but it's a different thing.
yeah,
Doesn't
no.
specifically have to be in an organization. It's just you gotta be in there. There means wherever it is, you have to be in there
Yes.
to.
And the
Yeah.
culture, usually, culture is a watchword, was a word I was looking for. Because in case study also, you have to be in there, maybe for a short time, like 3 months. So you have to be in there. In a case study, you are just observing. You're observing what is going on. But in ethnography, you are part of what is going on. You are a participant observer. Participant observer. So you're learning the people's language, learning their culture. Could be learning their food, could be learning their religious values, because sometimes religion could affect the way people live. Learning all the taboos and non-taboos in the society. Every society have their own taboo. Let me give you an example of a taboo in an African society. When a family relative impregnates their relative. Understand? Let's say an uncle impregnates, the daughter of his brother. It's considered a taboo, So many cultures have a lot of taboos, do's and don'ts. So all these things are the specific things you need to learn about a people, for you to really understand. Religion, I must tell you, in our world of today, plays a lot of roles. The Catholics, the Protestants, and the Mormons, they have different orientation and attitude towards life. And if you don't understand people from this cultural perspective, you may not get them at all. And in terms of an organization, every organization has a culture. And I will tell they will, when we did management of IT, in a complex time, we learned that, organizational culture is one of the driving factors, of productivity in every organization. Sometimes some organizations have a culture that is very flexible and adjustable to change. Others have a culture that is very restrictive, to change. So that when you want to, let's say you want to digitize the company, have to move them to maybe another stage in the digital innovation curve. You discover it might be difficult for you, to do that, because we have different levels or stages of digitization, so it might be difficult for some companies and then might not be difficult for some companies. There are also ethnography also deals with like some unwritten rules. There are a whole lot of things about an organization and about the people, because the field work we are talking about here, the ethnography we are talking about, could be like studying the people in their own culture. Let's say some remote part of Africa. You live among the people for more, 6 months to 1 year to study a kind of a certain social phenomenon that you're interested. You could also be within an organization. And if you are in an organization, your interest is culture. So they will say culture includes taking for granted assumptions and unwritten rules that are virtually impossible to discover if you are there for only a short time. And for only a short time means like you are doing a case study. So most of these unwritten rules are things you need to question. Example of an unwritten rules may be punctuality. You don't need to be told that you need to come, even though they might mention it at the beginning. We resume by 10 p.m. and then every a.m. You don't need anybody to remind you that you have to be early to work, So, and some other unwritten rules in an organization, which you can observe, and then you'll be part of living the life with them, So sometimes it's not easy for you to be embedded in this kind of situation or this kind of organization and stay that long for 6 good months, or even beyond. So these are most of it. So context is very crucial. They will say context is very crucial. And we have ethnography schools. We have the holistic studies culture as an integrative whole, and the same method understanding culture from the point of view of the participant. When you are being empathetic, you are doing a holistic empathy with the subject is involved, and then going native. Empathy, trying to understand the people, the way they feel, and whatever is responsible for the way they behave, So some level of empathy as a researcher, so that you don't judge them so much harshly, Don't judging people harshly. Or let me give you an example of like this empathy that is being mentioned here. You travel to a new culture where you are doing the study, and then discover that they eat cockroaches, or they eat something that is horrible that can give you an allergy here. So wow, this is rubbish. Why would people eat this kind of thing? Some part of Africa where people like the way they dress like are naked, or you see women that pierce their nose and put big rings on there, so wow, why would human beings do this to themselves? That's why you need some skills. This empathy skills is very important when you're doing an ethnographic study. You need to be empathetic, say, oh, this is the way they live. This is their life. Sometimes we judge people because you are born in this certain culture, you're born in this certain religion, because of that, I have to condemn you for the things you do, but it's not your choice. You came from that culture, and that culture defines you. So I wouldn't expect you to behave the way I'm behaving, So the empathy is very important if you must go native, because you can't be native with them. You can't eat their food if you can't, And within an organization, you don't need to be very judgmental. This empathy is very important because as you observe, you're also doing some field memo, collecting some data, and possibly also interviewing people. When people realize you are kind of withdrawn, from them, you may not get what you want to get. Yeah, you might not get the information you expect from, because you need to be friendly, for you to actually dig deeper into a culture, So empathy is not needed when you're doing semiotic, because semiotic approach is almost like a positivist kind of attitude, where things are there just the way the symbols have their meaning, which you cannot change, So understanding of the culture from the point of view of the participant, and the empathy is not needed. Thick description and context that focuses on the meaning of behaviors. So other approaches we have critical ethnography, we have auto-ethnography, combination of ethnography and autobiography, and then ethnography, when you are native with some online community. maybe Facebook community, and you're studying what is going on there, members of an online community. So practical suggestion, write up your notes on regular basis. This question, observation, impression, feelings, hunches, unrecorded interviews, write up as soon as possible. Then analytic memos, periodic notes. There is always an emphasis on, writing up immediately. Because if you make an observation today and then decide to write it tomorrow, you might have forgotten some of the things you observed, because the human memory cannot be able to assimilate every information. So there are things that are better done when you are doing it. Like I will tell you, when you are doing a literature review, you are reading articles, like the way I'm reading articles now, preparing for a dissertation proposal. If you are reading, I'm writing. That's why I can spend the whole day in one article, depending on the length of the article, because I'm reading and writing, reading and writing. As soon as you drop the article, you may not remember anything other than the notes you made. And if there are any connections with the article and another previous article you read, where you think there is kind of agreement, it is when you are reading the article that it comes to your mind. And it is at that point that you make that note and that reference. While you are still reading the article, then you continue reading. If you wait for you to make a comparison by the end of the article, you will forget even which particular line that really struck you with the previous research. I'm talking from experience, So you spend a lot of time on one article. By the time you are done with the article, you are done with it. You may not make a reference to it. Go back to it again to read it a second time, But all the information you gathered is what you are going to read again and again. And that's when you need more information, you are going to go back to what you read. So that's like emphasis on writing things up, the moment you are doing it. Very necessary when it comes to participant observation in an ethnographic research. So data management, above all, at every step of the way, the ethnographer should be summarizing, indexing, and classifying, the data as appropriate. So not really an easy task. So advantages is the depth. The researcher is on site for an extended period of time. Discover aspect of the research side that might not be otherwise visible. Question taken for granted assumptions. Disadvantage takes a long time. I don't know if in the past any students have done ethnography in the CGU in the recent past. I don't know. Do any of you know? Because of the kind of time it takes, Probably the best time to do ethnography is during their doctoral studies. Yeah. Afaf was telling me by fall, I will be done with all my coursework. So I'll be doing independent study by fall. After this semester, I would have done with the directed readings. So the directed readings, the topic is much dwells on my dissertation study. So I will take it up again as an independent study, plan it very well as a course, which I will do over the summer, during my own leisure, so that by the beginning of the fall semester, I would have drawn up something that looks like a course to be studied, So that's what I'm gonna do for the fall. So after the fall, then from spring next year, I will be on doctoral studies. So, and then you can do like ethnography. You can leave CGU, but you'll be paying like 2,700 every semester to remain on the doctoral, to remain in affiliation with CGU. Then you can go on ethnography to any place of your choice. So study like 2 semesters, and 2 semesters on the site of ethnography. You might have collected enough data, and then to do your study. So it lacks breadth. Why does it lack breadth? Because it is kind of embedded in particular context. You go deeper in the context, deep down, but in terms of generalization, that is where the breadth comes in. It's applicable to other parts, might be difficult because this is strongly embedded on the particular context. It's not just a problem with ethnography, it's also a problem with other, qualitative research approaches, When you're doing a case study, you have also encountered a similar problem, lack of breadth because of lack of statistical generalizability across a wider population, so, but you go deeper. So that's why we say that qualitative research is very good when you understand, when you want to understand things in depth, So difficult to write up as a journal article. Least publishable unit of approach. So you see, collect so much data for like 6 months and then become a problem to write up. And even to manage, who God knows, the quantifiable or unquantifiable amount of data you are going to, why I got scared of qualitative research is like when I did just 10 interviews, when I was working with Professor China, the article we submitted to Aegis, which they rejected. It was just 10 students in Nigeria. It was telephone call. I had almost like 50 pages for just 10 persons. And then one of the reviewers came back with, we don't have enough sample. I was like annoyed. Said, do you know what these 10 persons took me in the analysis? Do you know the amount of data I collected? Do you know how much money I spent on telephone, international phone calls? How could I have done it? Maybe to go back to Nigeria and then do them face-to-face interview. Here in the US, it might be better. You can use Zoom, relax, do it on Zoom. That's what most people do these days. Understand? You do the interview on Zoom. Zoom will also help you to keep track of the transcript. Already does the what do you call it, transcription for you on Zoom, so better. But if you are using an ordinary telephone, you see what I did then? I have to download an app that records phone conversation. If you want to use a microphone and add it to your phone while you can't hear the other end, So it was something I had to struggle with then. But at the end, it says not. So think about it. Interviewing like 150 people. It's going to take you a very long time, So evaluating ethnography, contribution to the field. Contribution to the field. Of course, almost every other qualitative research will be evaluated based on what contribution you made. It runs through all of them. Contribution to research. Rich insights drawn. Does the research contradict conventional wisdom? Collection of significant amount of data and material. We would expect to see the subject matter set in its social and historical context. Not like discussing things out of context. Whatever the phenomenon you are discussing must be embedded in the particular culture you are discussing. It must be inspired, by the culture of the people, not making up some stuff that are not related. So it must be set in a social and historical context. It must be embedded in the context of your study. And then multiple viewpoints expressed. Go beyond the official line promoted by the organization. Sufficient information about the research method. Ethnographer as a research instrument. We mentioned this already about qualitative research in general. That the researcher is the instrument. So it is vitally important that you know what the researcher did and how, which is like keeping an audit trail, which is one of the ways of evaluating reliability in qualitative research, not just ethnography. In every research, in every qualitative research, they want to see what the researcher did and how. That is where the trustworthiness of the research lies. When we say trustworthiness of the research. So you have to show that you are trustworthy with what you are doing and show us what you did and how. Consider alternative approach. Sometimes they what we call negative case analysis, which is one of the ways of evaluating reliability of qualitative research. Look for contradicting information. Don't just gather information only to prove a point you already have in mind. Or it's like someone has a hypothesis, understand, you're expecting that the there's gonna be a significant relationship. That's what you are thinking before you started the research. You expected there's gonna be a significant relationship, and therefore you don't look at other possible views that might contradict what you have in mind already. That doesn't make you a good researcher. There should be that openness, and know what will be the outcome. Perhaps if there is anything like a contradictory information about that comes up on the way of the research, you have to also pay very good attention. So we call it negative case analysis. Here they say it is considering alternative perspectives. We call it negative case analysis as a means of evaluating reliability. Because we mentioned the other time ways of evaluating reliability of qualitative research. We mentioned like a member checking. We mentioned like a negative case analysis. We mentioned audit trails. And is there another thing? There are some, one or two more. So the audit trail is the overarching factor when it comes to establishing trustworthiness. Audit trail. We need to know what the researcher did and how. Very transparent. And then that's where your credibility or the trustworthiness of your research, lies. So there is some questions usually. We've just finished the update. Let's look at some of the questions that Professor Hoffman will be leaving at the end of this semester. I don't know if he will be still sitting. Let me take and take description. No, this doesn't look like the answer. Okay, this second reading template answer. When I was preparing for this exam, I went through all these questions again, because they are very necessary. Some of them are very subtle. Without learning them here, you might miss them. So what would stop a case study researcher from spending a significant amount of time at the research site? So a case study researcher mainly relies on interviews or for data. So assuming that the researcher has already been given access to documents and is not interested in observation, if the researcher is able to conduct interview on a daily basis and saturation is reached, there is no need for the researcher to remain at the site. I want you to pay attention to this word, saturation. Saturation is you keep on collecting information until, keep on interviewing people, collecting data until the time it comes to the point, where you are almost like getting the same information repeated. There's nothing new coming up. And that's when you have reached the point of saturation. Sometimes this question comes up, when do you stop collecting data? When do you stop interviewing people? When do you stop? Who knows when to stop?
When you reach saturation.
Exactly. Simple. When you reach saturation, when no new information is coming up, that's when you stop collecting information. So if he or
Also,
she
I think,
what?
sorry to interrupt you, Clement. Also, there is other possible answers. I think like if the researcher achieves the goal of the research, for example, in action research, they found an answer for their problem. This could be a potential answer. And also the other thing could be the project funding stopped. For example, like doing ethnography, and then the employer decided to stop the project, or action research, and so on.
So those are two different things. He's
They're two
asking
different
when you
things,
stop
exactly.
when you stop collecting data, not what happens to the actual project. Those answers
Yes.
are what happened to the project. But collecting data is saturation only, from what I remember.
Yes, saturation only. Whether you are doing ethnography or you are doing case study, once you are collecting data, this is not just particular to ethnography, it applies to interviewing in general. So you stop when you have reached saturation. So that's one thing you need to understand. This goes beyond ethnography. And these are the kind of things you mentioned. You might decide to mention them in a qual exam, depending on the type. Sometimes they make emphasis, like during our own time, they asked us what would be the research question, what could be maybe the possible outcome of the research, a contribution to study, that similar. Sometimes they mention some specific things you need to pay attention if you're answering those questions. So you give attention to those things while mentioning other things you think that are necessary, that needs to be mentioned in general. So your saturation is when you stop collecting information. Yeah. What if it is in quantitative research? Or what do we say when do you stop collecting data in a quantitative research? This is just like an IQ question because I've never read it anywhere.
Same thing.
Yeah. Huh?
Same thing. Also, like when you reach the saturation level. Same thing.
No, it cannot be this. It cannot be the same thing because the methodology of both of them differs. If I should attempt, correct me if I'm wrong. When you identify a statistically significant sample of a population based on randomization, and then you issue out a survey question, and from the survey you have collected enough information that is very representative. You don't have much missing values. Okay, assuming your target population is 400 respondents that are representative of the population, and then you got exactly 400 responses, no missing values.
Yeah, so saturation is very particular to qualitative research.
Qualitative.
If you mention saturation in quantitative, they're gonna think you don't understand it. So
yes.
Just be careful on that. Saturation is only for qualitative, not for quantitative.
Not for quantitative. Yeah, but the idea, that's what I'm trying to say. If you have this kind of idea on when do you, or sometimes such a technical question, when do you start collecting data in quantitative? Like you have to answer in this kind of thing, this kind of question. My own approach may be different. Your own approach may be different. But you reason it as a researcher, know what you think should be the best time. What kind of data you collect. But sometimes you need to go collect more data. Even in qualitative research, where you have not gotten to the level of saturation, you might need to collect more data. Maybe you discover that the data you collected didn't answer the research question. You might decide to triangulate maybe to another research site or with different subjects until what you are doing is meaningful. So because there could be a possible situation where you have reached saturation, and yet you don't have good insights into answering the problem. It might be something wrong with the methodology, or the subjects of the site and the site itself might need to be changed. So because you didn't get what you actually want, you might need to do some triangulation with another site or subjects. So while studying the same unit of analysis. So if he or she did, would that person become an ethnographer? Spending, assuming, this question. You spend a long period of time on a case study. Does that make it ethnography? I'm asking. Usually case study, they say should take like 3 months or more or less, but not an extended period of time. So assuming that a case study researcher went to the company, maybe things changed or things didn't work out as planned.
Yeah. Can be a case study.
Then he or she ends up staying like 6 months. Does he make him an ethnographer or ethnographic researcher? Mohammed, what did you say? You said yes.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the case study could be solved in many different methods. So it is
It wouldn't
possible.
be it wouldn't be an ethnographic research if the original question he wants to address doesn't bother on culture. This will depend on whether the interviews led the researcher to change his or her research questions to be one about culture, and as a result, conduct a significant amount of field work, which will become the main data source. So that you have spent an extended number of months, on a research site, on a case study doesn't make it an ethnographer. You have to change your research questions. I mentioned that some time ago. When they give you in qualifying exams, when you are asked to maybe design a qualitative research based on an already conducted quantitative research, usually begin by addressing the research question. So if you want to do ethnography, the question must border on some cultural realities you want to study. And then if it is case study, then it must be specific to case study. So the research question is what decides or determines what you are actually studying. So Meyer states that an ethnographer learns from people, whereas a case study researcher studies people. If the researcher is an interpretivist or a criticalist, would you say that by studying people, you learn from them and vice versa? If so, is Meyer's distinction real for non-positivists? An interpretivist is a research instrument and a subject. Yeah. Doing interviews can enable the researcher to experience a double hermeneutic that enables the researcher to learn through understanding meaning in context. Thus, interviews allow a case study researcher to study and learn from people. So not only that a case study researcher also studies people, he also learns from people. So doing observation also enables a similar pattern of study and learning. Therefore, I would conclude that Meyer's distinction is not valid. So the difference here is learning from people as an ethnographer and then studying people as a case study researcher. So the answer here is that, interviews also allow the case study researcher to also learn from people. So that distinction is not valid. Does it make sense? So when you are doing case study, you also studying people and also learning from people. So Meyer mentions thick description. What is thin description? Thin description is a fact-laden, example, a survey. Whereas thick description is meaning-laden and interpretation. So thick and thin description. Meyer discusses ethnographies, and later in this book, there is also a summary of Jun Cho's, one of my dissertation, which I would classify as an ethnography based on our limited knowledge of ethnographies and dissertation question. We do agree. We didn't look at the dissertation. If you're interested, you can. So why might you consider doing ethnography? I think ethnography is an elegant way of studying an organization's culture and beyond. So the discussion that observed, analyzed were public. However, he did have gatekeepers. The project managers of the various open source software system he chose to the study, and in one case, the subject manager asked him not to include his project data in the dissertation. Thus, I can conclude that no organizational data collection process is perfect. So, would you agree that an action researcher would apply an ethnographic approach if the problem to be solved is related to culture? This may not always be the case. As noted earlier, case studies and ethnographies can both facilitate the study of organizational culture. Case studies are more aligned to ethnographies when it comes to studying organizational culture. So, but why wouldn't an action researcher apply ethnography? These are like contradictory approaches. An action researcher is interested in working with the people in an organization. And here, ethnography approach involves a lot of participant observation, which is usually done by the researcher himself. So I don't think it should be the case, So an action researcher would not apply ethnography because these are different research methods and the approach might be different and the question of interest might be different. So, would you agree that it is more likely that a qualitative researcher would do unrecorded interview during an ethnography than during a case study? I agree with the premise. Yes, ethnographies rely on observation first and foremost. They are more likely to have conversation with research participants on an informal basis. But in a case study, you need to record your interviews. Otherwise, you'll be lost. But in ethnography, you might not have unrecorded interviews. You can just listen, interact with people informally, and then take notes almost immediately after doing that. But because also he's there for an extended number of time, so he can still collect more data. But a case study researcher has a limited time, so how would you rate the quality of the research method? Section of Klein and Young in the principles of evaluation of a qualitative research. The research method section describes the research approach of the critical ethnography, outlines the settings, the time frame, and states the type of data collected throughout the rest of the article. The various principles stated by Klein and Meyers are discussed. Other questions are based on the journals that were read then. So this brings ethnography to an end. And that is section 4. So what do you think? I think we gathered enough information about ethnography research. Grounded theory, Coben and Strauss. It's an approach, it's a method, and also an approach to data analysis. So, because of the techniques that are involved. Grounded theory. So what do you think about grounded theories, guys? When do you think you should do grounded theory?
When you want to create a theory.
Yeah.
From data.
When you want to develop a new theory based on the empirical data you collected, a comprehensive theory generation. There is something, very important in the idea of grounded theories, that this continuous interplay between data collection and analysis. In other research methods, we collect data first, and then we analyze at a later stage. But in grounded theory, data collection and analysis goes on simultaneously. So that's the interplay. It goes on simultaneously. It's not left to a particular stage in the study. That's one thing you have to bear in mind. The concept and the theory are supposed to emerge from data. That is why it is grounded. Allows the emergence of original and rich findings that are closely tied to data. So the researcher should make sure that he or she has no preconceived theoretical ideas before starting the research. So you don't need theory or any theoretical lens to guide what you are doing. So you come in with a neutral mind. Sometimes they say what you have learned in the past might also influence you, but don't bring it to bear on the data collection and analysis. Yeah, because you cannot erase your previous knowledge completely, previous theories completely, but don't bring it to bear to influence what you are doing. So make sure that the reading approach doesn't stifle creativity. Usually very useful in developing context-based, process-oriented descriptions and explanations. So context-based theory building, useful in studying regular and repeated processes. This is something you need to pay attention to. If you want to study maybe something within an organization and you think it is something that is repeated processes, you might say that the rationale for your doing grounded theory is because grounded theory is very suitable for regular repeated processes. These are the kind of things that makes you doctoral, These are the kind of things I love to hear, when people mention them. You don't just say, I'm going to do grounded theory, but I want you to mention why you chose to do grounded theory. And this is the kind of thing you need to mention. And that's why I'm laying emphasis on it, So just bear it in mind tonight that regular repeated processes are very good for grounded theory. Don't forget it, please. As a justification, if the question in the exam requires that you do a grounded theory, so state this as your rationale for doing it. So it offers relatively well signposted procedures for data analysis. Signposted because you already have the open coding, the ASIA coding, and then already given by Cobbin and Strauss, Glaser, and then Cobbin and Strauss, which is widely used. Sometimes used by researchers solely as a way of coding their data. Yeah. So Glaser and Strauss were the co-founders, but they later part ways because of a disagreement. So Strauss left Glaser and then teamed up with Cobbin to develop a how-to manual, contains clearer guidelines and procedures. So, however, Glaser believed that Strauss and Cobbin's formal approach is far too restrictive, but the Strauss and Cobbin version is what is widely used today, Yeah, because people find it very easy and clearer and ready-made, well signposted, and helpful procedure. So we are no longer talking about Glaser and Strauss. So if you are using grounded theory, I want to use coding as a way of analyzing your data. So I presume, or I'd recommend that you state clearly that you are using Cobbin and the Strauss approach and not Glaser. We are going to see the difference. Let me pull up an information from the other book where the comparison was very clear, because it's kind of very subtle, I must tell you. Sometimes it's very confusing because one stage in Glaser and Strauss is different from another stage in Cobbin and Strauss. So let me open up this information on there. Yeah, so I'm quickly grabbing the information. Just hold on. Let me get grounded theory. Case study research. Okay. Looks like I'm there now. Okay. What's going on? Okay, I have to stop sharing this so that you can share this. Okay. Approaches to doing grounded theory. Okay. Originally, Glaser and Strauss, 1967. Then Cobbin and Strauss is 1990. So, let's see. Okay, how to do grounded theory research. After you have collected and transcribed your data, the first stage of qualitative data analysis in grounded theory is called open coding. Okay. Or one of the difference. The two co-founders, publicly disagreed in 1990 when Coben aligned with Strauss aligned with Coben to publish this book. So Atuta says that Glaser disagreed with Strauss and Coben on two fundamental issues. Strauss and Coben suggested breaking down the coding process into 4 prescriptive steps: open, axial, selective, and decoding for process, whereas Glaser uses only 3: open, selective, and theoretical coding. So which one is longer? Okay, now look at, when you compare the two, both of them are agreed in open coding. Then the axial coding for Coben and Strauss is selective coding for Glaser. Then the theoretical coding, which is the third stage, is a selective coding for Coben and Strauss. So bear it in mind. The Coben and Strauss method have 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, whereas Glaser have only 3 steps: open, selective, and theoretical coding. Glaser objected to the use of a coding paradigm and a conditional matrix, which are designed to provide ready-made tools for the conceptualization process. This ignored the emergent nature of grounded theory. So the Strauss and Coben version is the most widely known and used because of the ready-made tools provided by these two in their book. So today we use the Coben and Strauss. We do the open coding, which involves just pure description of the text, summarizing the text by use of a searching code. These codes are descriptive, which means they identify, name, and categorize phenomena found in the text. Have you used this approach before? Who among you have used it? Because personally, I have used it.
What do you mean?
In open coding, yeah. In open coding, you just give labels, You read something,
I think in the class we had to do some paper, didn't we? I remember for my research paper we did do this.
Okay, you did grounded code, yeah.
Yeah.
So we also used it, and I found it very, very interesting. The open coding, you just read the text, summarizing, the transcript, and then highlighting some important information, and then maybe after reading like a paragraph, you said, oh, this person was talking about the importance, maybe the emphasis of this respondent is on, let's say for instance, his emphasis is on maybe say customer satisfaction. That is the summary, a summary of what that particular paragraph, because what you do is more of summarizing this text, and then the searching code you are going to use for that summary maybe customer satisfaction, because you think that is what the customer, what the respondent, that's what mostly that, those lines of his thoughts or ideas are. So it's just like summarizing people's idea with some code, searching code. Maybe this person emphasized so much customer satisfaction, and the other person emphasized on, organizational responsiveness. The other person emphasized on, maybe say human capital, and the other one emphasized. So we're going to do all this coding, searching codes. So that is the open coding. So there are some questions in the record that this man, Bone 24, recommends using grounded theory. What was the phenomenon addressed? Who the persons and actors involved? How? what aspect of the phenomenon are addressed. You know, when, how long, where, how much, and all those things. You know, so in the axial coding or selective coding, you see how they brought it together again here, because this stage should have been the axial coding stage, but they put selective
Clement,
coding in.
sorry.
What?
Sorry to interrupt you, Clement. Can I get a copy of this, please?
Is on the folder.
In the folder? Okay, so thank you.
Yeah. It's on the folder. So you see the axial coding, and they put it together here with selective coding, which is almost like combining Glaser and Strux and the Coben and Strux. And then coding takes place. The main activity of this stage is to define the conceptual constructs that might help explain whatever interaction occurs between the descriptive categories. You come with another level. After gathering all the codes, summarizing with all the codes, you begin to look about concept constructs again that are going to help explain what is going on in the interaction, you know, between all the descriptive categories. And then finally, the third stage is theoretical coding. Formulation of a theory. The aim is to create inferential, you know, or predictive statements, often in the form of hypothesis about a phenomenon. The most distinctive feature of graded theory is the theoretical sampling. What is theoretical sampling? Deciding on analytical grounds where to sample for next. The idea is that the data analysis proceeds, as data analysis proceeds, the emergent theory develops. However, this emergent theory might suggest the need for more focused period of data collection. So it is important to follow the graded theory procedure carefully, while at the same time trying to foster your own critical and creative inspiration. Look at Ukuhat's framework. You know, sometimes I relate this framework to other types of theory. The different types of theory we have in IS. You know, I relate this here. I relate here because in IX we have contextual theories, mid-range, and the grounded theories. So sometimes I kind of link, you know, this framework to the types of.
Can you make it larger? Thank you.
Okay, make it larger.
Yes.
Yeah, oh my God, what happened?
Oh, Clement, which file there? Can you show me which file?
Look, this particular file.
The one with the blue title?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, where do I? This is just crazy. Okay. Maybe there is something I'm not getting wrong. Don't worry.
I think on the bottom. Yeah.
Huh?
On the bottom. Yeah, below. Yeah.
Something is missing. The framework didn't appear on Google. You see, look at the framework. It couldn't be displayed. Anyway, let me go back to here. You know, it wasn't displayed on the. You can open it. You can open it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. If you want to click now to expand it again, it will disappear. So And then it's not very, even myself who is opening it, it's not too clear from my end. That's why it's also not too clear for you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
never mind. Thank you.
Yeah, so degree of conceptualization, you have the description, interpretation, and then theory. Description, you have lex bounded theory. When you're on the level of description, you still have a bounded contextual, theory building. You have not even started. When you begin to do interpretation, you can come to this substantive focus in the scope of theory. So what it means, the higher or the deeper you go, that is the higher your degree of conceptualization, which means the deeper your analysis, the more, the scope of your theory. So this arrow means higher conceptualization, which comes with a deeper degree of analysis. So on the y-axis here, you have degree of conceptualization. And the degree of conceptualization, the higher it goes, the more theory you build. And this degree of conceptualization depends so much on the deeper your analysis. So the degree of conceptualization relates to the degree of analysis, carried out. So the first stage, open coding, the second stage, selective coding, the third stage, theoretical coding. Here now they mention Glaser approach again. Understand, not Glaser and Strauss. So theory scope relates to the scope of the theory actually produced. So you have to pay attention to these different levels: bounded, substantive, and formal. And this is a critique. Let me go back to the formal. It's almost 8:30, so we have to take a break at this point. So yes, we have to take a break at this, but let me pause. Okay. So as we saw data before the regression, or the break, some call regression, some call break. So we saw that the Strux and the Cobin, has 4 stages. They open, the axial, selective, and what they call coding for process. Whereas the Glaser and the Strux version has the open coding, the selective coding, and the theoretical coding. So I think the discussion here is on Cobin and Strux. So we saw the open, mainly description, summarizing with searching codes, refining the different categories, and then relate the categories, to a particular, the construct that explains the different categories. Then integrate a number of categories. Further details of the various categories. Conceptualize a central core category, to describe the phenomenon of interest. It is difficult to scale up to a larger concept of teams to see the bigger picture. Then code for process, not normally used in the IST literature. So what we do now is we do open coding, axial coding, selective coding, and theoretical coding. So we include a bit of theoretical coding because we need to develop. So the coding for process is not there. So the theoretical coding, Glazer's, look at it here. Glazer's selective coding includes Strauss and Cobin axial and selective coding. So formulation of a theory. The aim is to create inferential. So as theory emerges, the scope of the theory widens. So if you are using grounded theory as an analysis method, where your goal is not to do, create actuality, to create a theory, you stop at this point. You stop at selective coding. If your goal is just to use this Strauss and Cobin approach as a method of analyzing your data, and you are not doing grounded theory, then you stop at this level. Is that clear? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Can you repeat if you don't mind?
I said if you are using this approach, this coding process as a way of analyzing your qualitative data, you stop at this level, at this third stage. You don't go beyond this stage. You do the open, the axial, and selective coding. Because your goal is not to develop a theory. So you stop at this level if you are using this process for data analysis.
So,
If you are developing a theory, which means you are doing grounded theory, after this selective coding, you do the theoretical coding. This theoretical coding for Glaser is like a combination of the axial and the selective coding. We don't do coding for processing IX and T literature. Is that very clear?
yeah.
So what did you understand from what I said?
So we do like the open coding and the exile for the analysis. And if we want to do the like developing the theory, then we'll use the other part.
Yeah, what we are saying here is there's a difference between when you are doing a grounded theory approach. When you are doing grounded theory, you are using this coding process of Gobin and Strauss. You use them to analyze the data within grounded theory. And if you are using this coding process within grounded theory, after they open the axial and selective coding, you are going to do theoretical coding. Theoretical coding, that's where you make inferential statements, predictive statements, propositions about the phenomenon. But if you are not doing grounded theory, but you still want to use this Gobin and Strauss coding process, then you stop at the selective coding. You don't do the theoretical coding. At that point, you come up with larger categories, various categories, central category to describe the phenomenon of interest. Is that very clear now? Is that well understood and taken? Mohammed, is that well understood and taken?
Yeah, I got it. I got the point, sir.
Yeah,
Appreciate
okay. So advantage and disadvantages. Allow researchers to use a systematic approach to analyze data early and at a detailed level. Remember, there is an interplay between data collection and analysis in grounded theory approach. So data analysis is not a separate stage like we see in other qualitative research. So it is something, an interplay, something that goes on simultaneously. So however, it can be overwhelming such that it is difficult to overlook the details. The most important thing is like focusing on what is the most important things that needs to be focused, because when you are analyzing a transcript that has too many information, sometimes you don't know where to focus. So it could be difficult to know what are the most important things that you need to look at and other details that are not important. So evaluating the grounded theories, rigor and validity is very important. How much openness you exhibited, and stating what you did and how, clear chain of evidence that the findings came from the data, multiple instances to support for categories, demonstration of familiarity with the subject area. The extent to which the theory has been produced. Has the researcher created inferential or predictive statements? Has the researcher suggested theoretical generalizations that are applicable to a range of situations? Theoretical, or analytic generalization beyond the specific context, any suggestion. That is how you evaluate a grounded theory. So we're gonna look at some questions. So let me ask you this question again. When is the most appropriate time to use, grounded theory? I mentioned it and I emphasized it at the beginning. Do you remember?
So when there is no data and we're trying to generate the theory, like develop the
No, I emphasized it. I emphasized it so much, so that would be your justification. Look at it, studying regular, repeated processes. Don't forget it again. Regular, repeated processes is best. When you want to study culture, what is the best approach to studying culture, organizational culture? Ethnography.
Well,
Ethnography.
like interviewing the people, right?
Ethnography.
Yeah, work doing field work.
Yeah. It looks like Amrik and the rest have gone.
Yeah, Amrik is he sent a message on WhatsApp saying that his internet is is down.
I didn't get any. I didn't get it. Okay, yes. Oh, my internet died. Hey, serious.
Ted and Elmira taking a nap. So
I've never.
No. Yeah, I think my
just
internet
kidding, you're just saying
also unstable.
Okay, Ted is still there. Okay.
Yeah, quiet person, Ted.
Actually, I only hear like a fragment,
Oh, nice.
So sometimes I don't really get the idea. I think there's a problem with the internet.
Oh, I see. I know why you like to get it recorded. Got you.
Yeah, my internet is a kind of problematic.
Yeah, I can tell it because like your image, your camera is blurry, like not always clear.
Oh no, because my email, I'm using my my Facebook portal video, and it has background, background, all these virtual background images.
What is that Facebook thing?
It has, okay. Look at it now.
Yeah, like I can see you have a remote control and you're playing with it.
Yeah, because I'm seeing you from my portal. I'm using my portal camera, my Facebook portal.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it has beautiful background pictures. Look at this one. Claremont Graduate University. It is a virtual image that is like making my picture looks like blurry. It is a virtual image because the Facebook portal will be will show every part of my room, wherever I'm moving around my room. So it could be distracting when you are teaching with a portal.
Yeah, but that remote control, what is for?
The remote control is because I'm using Facebook portal.
What is a Facebook portal is? Well, I haven't heard about it.
It's a device you add to your TV. Understand? So I'm seeing you and delivering this lecture through my TV.
Oh, okay, got you.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, I think I got an idea. What from where did you get the Facebook broker?
It's on Amazon.
Okay, I need to look into it to see what it's for. Because I have no idea.
There's a lot of options, for virtual discussion and other options like Amazon Fire Stick. Watch your videos or your TVs and the news and a whole lot of options.
Yeah, I have Google Cast.
Okay, it also works like Google Cast. It has all those stuff. So according to Meyers, grounded theory features a continuous interplay between data collection and analysis. Why would other approaches to doing qualitative research not include this feature? So this answer is theoretical sampling is critical, in grounded theory because there is no theory to guide data collection. So analyzing collected data provides the researcher with information about what data to collect. So this does not mean that other approaches to qualitative research cannot apply a similar process. However, they are not dependent on it. Simple, they are not dependent on theoretical sampling. So you can do theoretical sampling in other approaches, but they're not dependent on it. What do you think the likelihood of being able to clear from one's mind all preconceived theoretical idea before starting a grounded? The likelihood seems to be low. It is difficult to control one's mind in this way, By using an unstructured interview protocol, as well as using collected data to conduct theoretical sampling, it might be possible to achieve a similar outcome. The grounded theory method does not guarantee an excellent study. Creativity is essential. So in the end, what do you think Glaser and Strauss are arguing about? Glaser was fully committed to the method that he and Strauss developed, while Strauss realized the value of the method for all qualitative researchers. So it is unclear why Glaser could not accept Strauss' decision to revise the method for broader use. So this man Glaser, I don't know what's his problem. Strauss tried to make this approach, good and better for other research, applicable to other areas. He wanted to, make it to be more restrictive to only grounded theory. So who should we praise more, Glaser or Strauss? Thanks to Strauss and Coben, making it possible for us to have a well signposted method of data analysis. How do codes, become categories in Strauss? Become categories. When you get to the axia, the open coding data is based on creating codes and considering whether some of all these codes are maybe constructs. This requires constant comparison of the codes that emerge clearly different. These different codes become categories. In other words, codes provide an initial attempt to indicate that the data is what is telling to the researcher. Some of these codes will each become a category, whereas others will be grouped into categories. Usually, after the open coding, the codes become categories when you get to the axia coding, So that would be like a simple way to say it. So this was based on the paper we read. Okay, that's all with grounded theory. Section 6. So section 6 might be participant or field work. Let me see. Or interviews. Okay, interviews.
Clement, question for you, the grounded theory, if you don't mind. On the slide 3, on the study guide. So that the thing I really got confused with is the selective. Why we cannot use selective?
Selective coding.
Yeah, like for example, you know the narrative analysis, right? Which is the later chapter.
Yeah.
So it could be applied with the grounded theory. So can we use selective to it or no?
Selective code. You mean selective coding?
Yes.
In narrative analysis itself is an analysis method. Grounded theory approach by Corbin and Sue is a different analysis method. So how can you use an analysis method in an analysis method? It's not possible. So you say that you use that. You say that you use narrative analysis to analyze like a document, maybe mostly in a positive way, positivist approach, or you use this coding process, you know, for you can use it either to understand your data in a case study, you know. If you are doing something like an interpretivist case study, where you need the flexibility to understand things, you know, you can use this coding process to summarize your data, to understand what your data is telling you. Any time you use an interview, there's always has to be a transcript to analyze. And you are using this approach whenever you have an interview. When you have a narrative analysis, you are like analyzing maybe something an evidence that is there, you know, maybe a document. You're analyzing what has been stated there, not so much a transcript you collected. You are trying to understand, you know, what people said. In narrative analysis, you're analyzing a story, either a written story or a story told by someone. So there's some level of objectivity in the analysis. And that's why it is more of like a positivist. You can do it in a very positivist way. In the sense you are trying to understand what the document is saying. So it's different from when you are doing you are using the coding process of Corbin and Strux to understand your interview, you know, analyze your transcript. So there are two different approaches. Yeah, narrative analysis, you have a story told, you have a document written. So to analyze the document or the story, you use narrative analysis. In this case, you have an interview transcript, you gathered, and they want to understand what people are saying. You use the coding process to analyze the data. So, which means, let's say if it is like in any qualitative research where you relied on data, you relied on interviews, you have an interview you conducted, you can use the process if you think it is appropriate to help you to understand your data, because all this coding is also a way of helping you to compress, summarize your data so that you understand what the data is saying. If you don't have interview, then what are you coding for? You know, what are you using? You can use this process of Corbin and Strux. You can use some other analysis method, maybe hermeneutics, semiotics, you know, narrative analysis. Yeah. So the role of the interviewer is to
just want to share that when we did our project, one group member of mine was William. He did with like a Twitter. Yeah, he got the data from Twitters, and there were so many people left the comments on Twitter, and he just analyzed from those texts. Yeah. Just
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so in that case, you can use narrative analysis, right?
Yeah.
You use narrative analysis, yeah. We shall come to those analysis method, yeah. Because this is like you have a written. You have a written.
Sorry, go ahead, Clement.
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So Ted, like there is like a popular person or famous person on Twitter that was posting, and there was people was comment, like leaving comments there, and then that your partner did analysis, narrative analysis through their comments.
Kind of that way. The project name we did was the, let me try to recall. We did with the Texas crisis, because I think it was last year of February, and there was a big event, like a natural disaster in Texas. So many people got mad and went to, I think it was Twitter, yeah, and also follow, so yeah, public social media, and people were leaving their comment what they think about those crises, and yeah, my partner just get the data from that, and I didn't know how he got those data. I think he created some special account from Twitter. Not a normal person could do that. Just
Yeah, and this consider unethical data, because yeah, you have to get permission from the
Yeah.
the participants, like the people who left the comments. You have to
Yeah.
get the permission from them before like conducting the study.
Yeah, he just did that way. Just another way you can, yeah, just for sharing. Yeah.
So thank you so much for the clarification. So let's move on.
Thank you, man.
So this is an interview. We don't need to waste time, on interview, because we already know when to use it and how to use it, and we don't need to go into all these specifics during the qual exams. So it's all about listening, prompting to encourage, and encouraging. Focus on the subject. Don't impose your own language or impose your own worldview. Most important skills: eliciting and listening. Look at this Cavalier and Chames type of question. Very, very important. Slide 11. So types of interview, we usually use semi-structured, right? Structured is more of rarely used, because structured is more like a survey question in quantitative. So we don't really use structured. Unstructured, where you don't have any pre-formulated questions, that could be very weird. You may not even know what to. It's just like an open discussion. So unstructured. So semi-structured is what was pre-formulated, in the sense that but not strict adherence to them, but it gives you a guide based on the research question and the kind of information you need to collect. So you have some important questions that are very important, because you're asking questions to get feedback that will answer your research question. So you pre-formulate some questions and then allow other information to emerge as you do the interview. So you can also use focus groups, usually 7 to 12 participants, an hour. It can be videotaped. This focus group may be, to get the views of, people who have interest in a particular area you want to study. So then the interviewer, you are the moderator. You moderate the interaction with this focus group of people, and then ask 1 or 5, 6 general questions, and then obtain the responses. At least 3 focus groups are needed, typically 10 to 15 persons, 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, and then 7 to 12 participants, 5 to 6 general questions, 3 focus groups. So we have other projective techniques, as participants to reflect and talk about the scenario, that is, vignette questions, ask people to recall events, experiences, potential problems, techniques for minimizing dermatological, drama to address potential problem. Depends on what, So prepare your interview guide, no matter what type of interview you use. You should always be at least prepare for opening, introducing yourself, prepare the introduction, explain the purpose of the interview. Well, Mohammed, you are listening very clearly. That's, the things you need to take notes,
Yeah.
explain the note interview, and then prepare a few key questions So it takes up to 8 hours for each hour of dialogue. 8 hours for each hour. Voice recognition software, transcribing machines, like the Otter.ai I gave you, the cost. Should the whole interview be this transcribed? If you're using the Zoom paid version, the whole interview will be transcribed. If you're not using the Zoom paid version, then you can't get the whole interview transcribed. You need to pay for it. Or Otter.ai might give you, if you don't have so much data, they'll give you like 600 and something MB. I don't know if they have reduced it. So my own, then it was enough for me to analyze the data that analyze the interview transcripts. If you have more data that exceeded the allocated data, free data you have for transcription, then you might need to buy extra. So.
And question, does this state about the group focus interview or no?
The what?
The group focus interview, like what, not one-on-one.
Yeah, group focus interview, that's what the focus group, that's what we discussed earlier. Interrogating people based on their experience and their interest in a particular area. It says 5 to, that's what we just mentioned, 7 to 12 participants.
Okay, gotcha.
Like an hour, have 5 to 6 questions for them. You can do the videotaping. Consensus is never a goal. At least 3 focus group,
So for example, can I do like interview with 2 people at the same time in Zoom or no?
No,
like
no,
as a
no.
group.
No. If you are doing a focus group, look at the number of participants.
Okay,
that
7
you
to
need.
12. Okay, got you.
Yes. On a particular area. If you're able to gather like 7 students, on GIX, understand? Students who are, if it is, the problem is, all these things is like bringing the people together. It's not easy. This person will tell you, I don't have time.
I know, man, it's tough.
Yeah, this person, this country, unless maybe you send such a message through AFAF and tell them that the person will be giving $20 for each participant. Once there is some remuneration, then people will sign up fast.
Yeah,
That's
you're
why
right.
they use money and gift cards to lure people to come together. Otherwise, everybody will tell you, oh, I'm busy, I don't have time. At the end, for 1 week, you may not succeed in bringing 7 people together because you are doing it independently. And let me tell you, if classes were to be by choice, voluntary, there are students who will not come to class a whole semester. They will just write the exams. Yeah. So they always see everybody coming to class because it is mandatory, because you must be there, because they are judging participation. You must, that's why as a professor, you can't use your student to conduct a research. It's not recommended because there is a lot of biases already involved in using your students. Some will say, oh, it's my teacher, we do it. Some say, oh, if I don't do it, I might not be happy. Some say, oh, let me help him, he's a good man. So you do a lot of compromises. So that's all about interview. We really need to be fast. So that's about interview. Other information that you need about interview, you might study it up. So this is 6th. Why don't we have, okay, the 8th? I didn't see the 7th here. Okay. The 8th should be, is it participant observation? Okay. Participant observation. When you're doing ethnography, when you have to be there, when you go native, when you need to be on the ground with people living their life and then experiencing them in their real world. So observing them in their own natural setting. That's what I mean by their real world. Observing from inside versus from outside versus from inside. A case study researcher might be observing from outside, maybe not too, it's outside in the sense that not too much involved in the actual activities of the group. But from the inside means you are part and parcel. So Brian, make a division of what it means to be inside and outside. This is not important for the qualifying exams. So organizational versus community fieldwork. Fieldwork versus interview. Interviews take place in private places, scheduled times, and are typically half an hour in length. But fieldwork involves an extended period of engagement. It takes place in informal meeting and the public spaces, informal conversations. That's the difference between a fieldwork and interview. All fieldwork usually involves a period of enculturation, a time you learn to become a member of another culture, and this process builds the researcher's confidence. That's major difference. And then as participants observe and record activities of actors in a particular place, you look at space, actor, activity, objects, events, time, goal, feelings, set of activities that might be linked together into events. Getting past the gatekeepers, you need to, need a clear plan. When entering an organization, the organization, there is entering an organization, the researcher should know much about it. Cannot know everything, specify why the research can be of benefit to the organization. It's important to promise them confidentiality, and access to the report before it's published. Once past the gatekeepers are like those, like maybe top managers and other stuff who will give you the opportunity to really come into the organization. So these past gatekeepers, you must contact them beforehand, maybe through your institution or through your advisor, Once you get the approval, then they promise them the benefit they are going to accrue, your research is going to accrue to the organization, and also the confidentiality in report. You don't mention their names. So we interviewed a certain company, not mention explicitly the name of the company. So it is important to maintain one relationship with the organization being studied. Key informants should be identified early in the project. Very necessary. Fieldwork takes like 4 to 8 months. It ends when few new insights, like a saturation, and then the researcher must know how to effectively use audio and video recording equipment. Very necessary. Make equipment invisible as possible. And then write notes and memos even when you are recording. Catalog and index recordings and not memos. Not everyone is suited to doing field work. Just like they said the same thing with interview. So most of these things are other information that you need to know. Let me check the questions study guide answer.
So are you sharing or no?
Oh my God. So I haven't been sharing.
So I don't see anything. That I was curious.
Oh yeah, I didn't know sometimes this Zoom stuff. No, because I'm moving between sharing one stuff and another. Sometimes I don't know when I'm not sharing again. Please always remind me, because I close one page and open another from different sources. Sorry. So but at least you heard everything I said. These are the most important, factors, that we need to consider when you are doing field work. Like getting to know about before you get into an organization, you must have exchanged some information, with the gatekeepers, those who will give you access. Tell them about the importance of your research and what benefits they are going to gain, and then promise them confidentiality, know how to use audio recording and video equipment, make them as invisible as possible, and then get people's permission also to record them, wherever. Keep memos and write up things, even when you are videoing. Like if you're doing an interview also, you're recording people, you might also be making some notes as you are listening to them and asking them questions, so all this is like what we have, like field work is, and it's much more extended, like you have to, up to 6 months or 8 months, depending on how long It happens in informal settings where you meet people in their normal natural settings. So these are all the information we need to know about, field work. That's why they are different from interview. You are like an insider within the organization. You have to be part and parcel of the people. Like that's what the emphasis on enculturation. So that's why it is different from, you're not an outside observer, admiring from afar. You are an inside, a participant observer, which means you are participating in the life of the company maybe as an employee, and at the same time you're observing and taking notes, recording stuff, and then gathering all the data you need for your research. So when you are conducting a fieldwork in an organization, you ask for and granted permission to videotape in a meeting in which you are a non-participant observer. So this is the first time you have videotaped a meeting. What steps would you take after you receive the permission? Look at the steps. Check the room to determine where the camera should be placed. Make sure you know how to use the video camera. Make sure the video equipment is working properly. Test it in the room. Make necessary adjustments. Create a naming scheme for the video files and identify storage location. Remind the meeting attendees in advance that video taping will take place during the meeting. Save the video to a file, simple something. So you are conducting an action research study. Part of your study requires field work. You get permission to sit on a number of meetings that may be relevant to your research, but you do not know most of the meeting participants. What roles, as per Bryman, would you best describe your status in the meeting? This is a trick question. Whether I know all the meeting participants is irrelevant. The roles I will play will depend on the purpose of the meeting and how my agreement with the gatekeepers allow me to participate in the meeting. So, what is a community field work? Community field work is an observation in a setting that is not bounded by the constraint of formal organization. I could be a member of an organization who is doing work in a community setting. What activities might community field work include for an IST researcher? Observe the impact of a community lab where children learn how to program. Participate in a program that provides programming instruction to children and observe the outcomes. Ask people in a community about how they work together to improve access to online systems. Can you provide an example of community field work that you read about this course? Okay, this is a Vastny and Kiel study, trying to reduce the digital divide. Yeah, we read it, When might you use and when might you not use interviews during field work? Okay, think about this paper, okay? How to interview buyers to understand their business processes and what improvement they would like to have. After he and his company built a new system to help the buyers, he observed how they were using the system and later interviewed them about the value of the system. May or may not, have added to their job. So how long do you think it would take to become enculturated in the organizations or community that you are studying, for your project? As part of my dissertation research, I trained employees how to use a spreadsheet to solve a business problem they were having. It was not studying organizational culture, but had I been doing so, I believe it would have taken months to understand. Does building rapport mean the same thing as being enculturated? Not specifically. A researcher can build rapport with an interviewee, without being enculturated, and doing this multiple times may lead to enculturation. Yeah. What did the authors of the 3 articles you read this week? Okay, this so these who are the gatekeepers? Okay, Lee and Myers. One author had previously studied the company, Shaker and Sahib. Effectively, the authors were gatekeepers. Okay, they are part of the organization. They do not say mayor. No specific person was mentioned. No specific person was mentioned. Faculty members. Yeah, faculty members will be like gatekeepers in an academic institution. Department chairs and administrators. So they are like gatekeepers. So that's all about participant observation. So 9. So using documents. This is very, very important. Because when you're using documents, you have to understand the credibility of the document, whether the document, should be trusted or not to be trusted, authenticity of the document, credibility of the document, whether it is also representative of what, should be taken to be the correct information. So like the issue of credibility, authenticity, and the representativeness are like 3 important criteria which we are going to see. So documents could be historical records, photographs, videos, audios. These are, anything printed online that can be in the form of text, photographs, videos, and audios. Documents may be as significant as speech in social action, static or continual in a set of laws, about authors and readers, relationship to active and passive readers. So documents may be classified by who wrote them and not who owns them. Personal, written, private, public. Private, produced by organizations or internal purposes. Public, produced for public consumption. So personal, private, and public. Documents can be analyzed for meaning and or for references. They can include important details or events, cross-checking with other sources, making things visible and traceable. Documents can be used to supplement the data provided by interviews and fieldwork. You see, so kind of triangulation. Look for and apply search tips. Document searching ports of call, Google, University Library, librarian organization being studied, an archive, databases, yeah. Assessment of quality, authenticity. Is it a rating? Credibility? Is it free from error? Representativeness? Is it typical? And then, okay, the last one I didn't mention at the beginning. Meaning, is it understandable? So these 4 factors are very necessary in assessment of the quality of the document. That's why sometimes they say what you get in an online blog, may not be truly credible or authentic or even representative when compared to a peer-reviewed research paper. A peer-reviewed research paper has all this information, all this, methods of assessment. So they are authentic, they are credible because they are peer-reviewed, they are representative, and they are understandable. If not, they won't be peer-reviewed and published in renowned journal. So look at the people that worked when I took this class. So Amrik took this class with me, and they see Emira also took this class with me. So we were all both together in this class. So that's all about using documents.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is like a refresher. We are refreshing once again. So, okay, these are not ones questions reading guide. Okay, there was no, he didn't provide for this week. So for section 10, reading guide update. So analyzing qualitative research. Maybe next week we finish up with this analyzing qualitative research. We continue here next week because analyzing, this is very, very important topic. We're almost like very exhausted at this point in time, and this is like a topic we have to pay so much attention to, because when you choose a research method and you have a philosophical approach, whether positivist or interpretivist or criticalist, so your research method and your philosophical approach must concur with a method of analysis. So method of analysis is very important, because you choose a good method, you have a good philosophical approach, and if you miss having a good method of analyzing your data, everything is messed up, which means you're not gonna get any insight after all the labors and all the time you took to collect the data. So we're gonna see next week the different research methods, the different philosophies that matches with each, of these methods of analyzing data. So we are going to finish this qualitative research next week. We will finish it next week and then begin with design science. Yeah.
Okay.
So we finish.
Just
Yeah,
a
we finish.
question.
Yeah, we finish.
What software do you use for analyze this?
Atlas, we have Laximansa.
Oh, okay.
We have Deduce. We have Atlas TI. I've used Atlas TI.
Okay. Yes.
But we signed up then for the free version, and when it expired, they don't have any access again.
Yeah, I think I remember.
Unless you register with a different email again or different name, so that they don't discover that your name or your email have been taken.
Yeah, CGU using CGU provide a free version of Atlas.
Okay. Yeah, so CG, you can also provide you that. Yeah, Atlas.t. I've used Atlas.t. I've used it like for both for class work and also for the research.
Yeah, the only thing I don't like in Atlas Limit is they don't have like on the project, you cannot get additional users involved. You have to only each project only has to be done.
Yes, it's not a cloud-based. That's a very important observation. Yeah, you cannot collaborate.
That's the problem. Yeah.
Yes, you cannot collaborate with Atlas. Yeah, so it's like a personal, analyzing data. And then if you use the Atlas TI for Axia for the coding process, it helps a lot. Do the open coding, the Axia coding, selective coding, using the Axia, using the Atlas TI. It is very helpful a lot. In fact, the only good analysis method I know very well, like when you're using all these qualitative research data softwares, is like doing coding. Coding your data.
Yeah, coding is very easy. Yeah, it makes everything easy. Like, for example, like on the project I mentioned earlier, I came up with the Apple Watch. So there was a trend for the consumers going to the Apple Watch, or Fitbit watch, or cost, or battery life. I came up with many things. So I coded to those words. So
Yeah. So it's possible. Yeah. So for you to get the open codes, then link them up to a larger construct in the Axia coding, and then then have overarching constructs that defines the whole categories, different categories. So it is easier to do it in Atlas TI. And then you have some visualization tools that you can show the connection between your data, on that Atlas TI. I've not used it for some time now because I've not done any qualitative research work, in the past. We are still struggling with semester work. Yeah, sometimes after a semester.
So far?
What?
Did you publish paper or not yet?
The one we did wasn't myself and China, but when you publish with a professor, it doesn't go in your name. So what I'm struggling is to do something on my own. Even if I do with a student, the first person whose name appears in the paper will take the credit as part of his portfolio. So even if four of us work on the same paper and it gets published, only one person
can take a credit of that. Yeah,
takes the credit. And sometimes people don't want to spend all the time only for them to help, because once the person gets the credit on his own, he may not like to work with your other people and then to help them again to publish, and perhaps they may not have time or something good to come up with. So that makes it so much difficult. So even if you publish with a professor, it doesn't belong to you. So everyone is struggling to do his own, even if it is conference, you know. But no, by the time we enter doctoral studies, we may have more time to do most of this, you know. Now we still have a lot of timelines, dates to meet up for submissions, and trying to get good grades for the semester, and so there isn't much time. Honestly, the way the CGU is structured, it's structured in such a way that you don't have the time to publish while you are in school. It makes it difficult for you. Honestly, I know some people might be, because of their previous experience or where they are working, there are people who have better opportunities than others when it comes to writing and publishing. There are people who have better opportunities. You
It's
know?
just a time thing, you know. I mean, like for example, for me, because like I'm want to study, it's hard like to to dedicate some time to do a paper, you know. Like if you have, like for you now, I would take advantage of writing a paper because you're already almost done, you know. You just need to get your
It's not, yeah, it's not like getting almost done. You know, you have to like get the dissertation proposal approved.
mhm.
When your dissertation is approved, then you are now relaxed. That is when you have reached the climax of this doctoral pursuit. Now you know what you are doing. Now you have all the time in the world before you finish that dissertation. You can even publish an aspect of your dissertation in a conference while you're still working on it, you know,
Nice.
and fulfill that portfolio requirement, you know. But until now, even if you have finished your coursework and you have not gotten you have not worked, because for you to work hard for your dissertation to be approved, it can take you a whole semester or even more. I know students who have been since last fall, they are still working on dissertation proposal. It is not it is not an easy task. The other student I met last time, you know, CJU, he told me he has read up to 300 papers, you know,
Mhm.
in the last 2 semesters. Myself, this semester alone, I've read up to 60, you
Wow.
know, and yet you are still far away from completion. So
Mhm.
imagine all that. So the emphasis now is not even to focus on publishing in a journal. The issue now is like, get this dissertation topic approved. Once it is approved, you have finally arrived. You know now where you are going. It can be, you know, taking a cup of coffee and then doing your research. Whenever you are ready, you defend, you know,
So
and
who's gonna be approved that dissertation or disapprove it? Or is your supervisor or the
yeah, you are of course your supervisor should prepare you to meet the dissertation council when he feels that you are ready, you know. Like now, Professor Ryan, let me show you. He asked me to come up with a pre dissertation, you know.
you can't stop the recording, Clement.
Okay, yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome.
Let me stop sharing and so okay, at this point, let me end the recording. So